Welcome to The Writer's Dream. Our show enables authors to talk about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. It's truly a forum for authors, aspiring authors, writers, and readers. We have a Facebook page called The Writer's Dream, and many of the shows are on that Facebook show. We invite people to ask questions, and we attempt to answer them. If you're looking for tips about writing, publishing, and marketing, you might find some on the shows. We're also on YouTube. We're entering our second year of The Writer's Dream, and we have more than 50 authors of all genre. So if you're interested in writing, if you're interested in other writers, you are especially interested in Long Island writers, please visit YouTube or Facebook, The Writer's Dream. Today's guest is Jeff Rimland, and Jeff Rimland is a poet-writer, and he has written a number of books. We have A Widower's Journey, we have Our Gifts to Each Other, Reflections on Half a Century, and Knowledge, Then Wisdom, Perhaps. So, Jeff, tell us about your books.
Yes, thank you, Linda, for having me on.
And, you're welcome.
Thank you. The first book here, Widower's Journey, I wrote after my wife had passed away, and I used a number of poems that I had written. It was about 11 years ago that I'd written before. I was in college and I used to write, and then I took certainly some new ones, and it was very good therapy. So it turned up to a book that was very therapeutic for me into a published poetry book. And the second book is Our Gift to Each Other, and these are poems that my wife actually wrote when we were about 19 or 20. I found them up in the attic, and then of course poems that I wrote to her at that time. And then it's sort of the ending of it is our wedding vows. So it's a little mushy, but it's love poems and such.
There ain't nothing like love.
That's it, exactly. And again, back to Widow's Journey. This is has love, has loss, acceptance, and moving forward in life. So and then of course Reflections on Half a Century is to do very, very nostalgic poems, and everything since I was born in 1955 up until about 2008, 2009. It's interesting poems about the men landing on the moon, JFK, and later on when I read a couple of them, you'll see there's different types. So it's like a little history in there, a lot of different thoughts and events. Then the last book that I just wrote was published in 2012, Knowledge and Wisdom Perhaps, is about being a single parent, raising 3 children.
Most timely.
Yes, and it has a lot of advice in there for careers, advice to myself, advice to other single fathers, and it's just been a pleasure being able to write all the books.
So, would you do some poetry reading for us?
Yes, absolutely. I'd be glad to. The first book, Widower's Journey, I've selected 3 poems.
Okay.
And the first poem is about, was when I actually met my wife. It was prior to our marriage. It's called My Destination. I traveled before I came to you, not knowing where I went or how I even got there. Somehow I came along your road, and stopping suddenly, I saw your light in the window. With a silent gesture, you asked me in, and for the first time, I found my destination. So there's a lot of imagery in my poems, and that one in particular kind of visualized the light in the window, I hope.
No.
So, and then the next poem is a poem that I wrote. I used to work in New York City. I used to travel on the train, and it was after my wife passed away, and it's called Journey to the Past. I'm traveling down the line through snow-covered tracks as I long for your warmth of familiarity, your smile and your knowing eyes of what I am about. Because we had traveled together on those same snow-covered tracks, I am looking for you amongst the trees that I see on the long wandering pathway towards what some call the future, but what I call an endless past without you. So that gives you, again, further imagery of going on the train and looking at the railroad tracks.
I think that's a feeling. When you lose somebody, that's a feeling that you have.
Yes.
It's like you're on an endless journey all by yourself.
Yes.
with no help, and
Yep.
you can't find that person.
Exactly, and again, it's poems. Poetry seems to come easy to me because I can kind of express my feelings. So that's why it was really good therapy, because you're getting out what your thoughts are.
Yes.
And the last one is a poem that I wrote to myself, but also to my children. And this, of course, is I guess the acceptance going towards the future part of the loss. Getting through another day. A commentary on my life is that I got through another day. A wise man once said 99% of life is showing up, and I've been showing up. That's why I try to impart to my children. Show up. Go to school, go to work, be with friends. Do and do and do until you are too tired to think about your loss of the part of your soul that has your mother's deep love, which you'll never have back in its past form, but she'll always be there for you in the deep recesses of your mind, heart, and soul. But let it not be all-consuming, as many times I tell myself, to prevent you from who you need to become, a separate, distinct person who can rely on yourself. And the children, my daughter, my youngest daughter was 13 at the time, and my next daughter was 17, and my son was 21. So they were all at the development stage. And with loss, everyone grieves in different ways, but it was my way of giving them and myself advice.
I noticed, obviously, one of the greatest stories of loss recently that's on television all the time is the children of Newtown and their
Yes.
parents showing
Yes.
up. And one of the mothers was asked, how do you go on?
Yeah.
And she said, I have another child.
Yeah.
And I have to be there, and I
Yes.
have to be present.
Yes.
And I think that's true for all of us, that we have to be present for certain things. If we
Yes.
can, in our minds, when we're going through that deep loss,
Yeah.
understand that we have to be present for something. I know many times it was my classroom that I was present for. 'cause I was a
Interesting.
teacher.
Yes. Yes. And
I had to be
yeah.
there for my kids.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So-
That's exactly.
And you captured that
No.
in that poem.
Thank you.
So,
the next one now it's interesting.
This is the mushy one,
This is
right?
the mushy one, but what I chose as our gift to each other, heartfelt poems of our love. So again, these were poems that were written to me by my wife, and poems that I wrote to her 30 years ago.
great.
30 years ago. So the first poem is page 56 of the book. Now, keep in mind, these are poems that my wife wrote independently of me. So she was writing at home in her house. I was writing poems at my house.
Is writing what brought you together?
I think to a large degree, we met at a day camp as camp counselors, and actually, that's what kind of started the conversation. Good insight. And she said, I wrote poetry. Oh, I read poetry too. Oh, really? And we exchanged poetry books at that time. So we got a chance to see. So then, of course, years later, I saw her book. It was in the attic, and I said, oh, wow. And then I just came up with this idea to make a book out of it. And she had never been published.
Now, did either one of you become professional writers?
No, actually, I was in sales. My wife was a teacher.
Okay.
But and then, of course, during the period of time that we had children, neither one of us wrote because we didn't have time. And it was just afterwards
That's
and
true.
before, right? Yeah. So again, this was a poem that she wrote in 1975. And it's labeled at the top, Her Heart, and then my poem is His Heart. So every other poem in the book is that
Oh,
structure.
that's beautiful.
Thank you. And Her Heart, a wonder. Have you ever loved someone so much that it hurts? Have you ever needed someone's touch so badly? Have you ever stopped to wonder, out of all the millions of people in the world, we found each other? Surely that is a wonder. And then my response was written independently, called Reflections of Our Love. My eyes to yours, yours to mine, warm breaths cooling each other. My eyes looking at yours, both through reflecting the love we feel. What I see in those eyes is so beautiful. There is no way I could ever live without you and your love. So let your eyes be mine, and I can see what you see, and have the love that you reflect, and you can have what I have forever and a day. So that was the mushy poem. Those are a mushy poem.
But I'll tell you, if I were 21 years old and it was Valentine's Day or my birthday,
Yes.
and my boyfriend gave me that book, I would really have a hard time saying no.
It's tough, right? Exactly. Well, we used to write it to each other, and I remember, Valentine's Day, and then get the little gifts. I would write all the little sayings on the cards that you get at the florist. So I have a collection of those. Who knows? Maybe I'll put that together someday
I
for a
think
book.
it's a good idea.
So, and this was published in 2006, the same year that this was published, 2006.
Before you go on to
Sure.
reading the other two, who did you publish? Did you self-publish or did you publish?
No, I actually submitted it to a number of publishing companies. The one that got back to me and said, yeah, we want to take a look at this, called Publish America. And did no cost to me at all. And they published it, and, I've had a pretty good relationship with them. And the fourth but last book I published, which we'll go over, was also Publish America. And it was a great example of companies that you could go to submit your work and not have to pay money for in terms of self-publishing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
In other words, it's kind of a cross between traditional and self-publishing.
Yeah, because you'll pay for the marketing.
Oh,
So
sure, well,
they'll publish it, exactly. They'll publish it, and no cost to me at all. They do the cover art and everything, and it's a regular book contract.
Yeah, there's a few companies like that.
Yeah, there's a few, and I even got an advance of $1. That was their symbolic
Okay.
advance, exactly.
Did you paste it on the wall somewhere?
No, I should. I
You
should
spent
have.
it.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, exactly. I needed to pay for the marketing. So.
Oh, that's
And then they
that's
have
funny.
some pretty reasonable marketing. This book is going to be at the
Book Expo?
AARP convention out in Las Vegas.
Wonderful.
I'm not going to be there. The book will be there, and I only had to pay $29 for that to happen.
I have to talk to you about that because
Yeah.
my own books, although they're written for young adults, I really think one of my big markets is grandparents.
Yes. In fact, I talked to the marketing person prior to having it done, and they said, again, there's a lot of grandparents in the ARP that are actually buying books for other people.
Oh,
So
sure.
one of them,
Oh,
children's
sure.
books or young adult books, definitely grandparents.
Well, my big market is parents and grandparents because kids who have money rarely ever buy books. They want to buy other things because they know their parents and grandparents are going to buy them books.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that's who I
Interesting.
really pitch to.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
Yeah, you have to know your audience.
Yes,
You have to
yeah.
know now, when
Exactly.
do you do poetry readings locally?
I have. I have done a few. Big thing for me is time to do the reaching out to these places, and a lot of the couple of the poetry workshops that I've done have been through a group that I belong to, which is Long Island Authors Group. We've done some poetry.
I belong to them too.
And you do also, exactly. So I did a poetry workshop, which was I really enjoyed doing.
Excellent,
a lot.
yeah.
But I definitely have to reach out more, and it's just a matter of time and going
There's
out.
a lot of
reaching.
poetry groups on Long Island, aren't there?
Yeah, the tremendous amount. There's tremendous amount. Poetry is very, very popular on Long Island, and it's amazing that probably every single day of every single month there is a poetry event of some kind. I actually did a reading at the Northport Arts Coalition.
Right.
In the summertime, I think it was last year, and
Have
that
you-
was a lot of fun.
Have you gone to the gazebo in Oceanside?
No, but I was.
Gotta do that.
Yeah, I know. It's like unbelievable. Now
Yeah.
we're talking about it. So many different events.
There's really two things about Long Island, I think. Long Island is, there's a lot of writers, there's a lot of poets, there's a lot of venues for you.
Yeah.
But there's also so much competition.
Oh, unbelievable.
That,
yes.
if you really want to become a star, it's that whole thing about being the little fish in the big pond or the big
Yeah.
fish in the little
Yeah,
pond.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think I'm going to move from
There's-
Long Island.
yeah, right. I know. But there's a lot of open mic night type of scenarios, which I enjoy. I've done a couple of those, and that's a lot of fun. So it's just a matter of how much time do you have to do the marketing, and
Right.
that's just crazy.
Right, right.
But forums like this are very good. It gives you an ability. To
How about
So
Reflections on-
Reflections on Half a Century is a very nostalgic book, as I mentioned earlier, about events between 1955, when I was born, to about 2009. It was published in 2010. And the first one is a poem about John F. Kennedy assassination from an 8-year-old's perspective. At that time, I was 8. And the name of it is That Day, November 22nd, 1963. School was canceled early that day, just after my 8th birthday. Playing after school as usual and knocking on my friend's door, his mother said, "Danny can't come out to play today. The president has been shot." Running home and shouting into my mother, she said she knew and turned on the television. We watched it for hours and days, seeing the man who shot him, strangely getting shot himself. For days, the headlights on every car burned in memory of this great young man's life and mourned his death. A first experience seeing real death and dying and mourning, even as a young boy, the sad reality of human nature. And there's so many parallels. Every generation has their JFK assassination. As we're going through this now with the Boston Marathon. Unbelievable. And we went through it September 11th, which is in here also.
You know, and there's a residual inside you. I know every time we have one of these things happen, it dredges up everything else.
Yes.
Everything
On
else.
on a personal level,
Yes.
absolutely.
Where was I when JFK was shot? Where was I when the trade towers fell?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's a kind of a beginning to become concerned about the collective national grief.
Yes.
And how we get to deal with that, because I was watching a very, very wonderful commentary on the Boston Marathon thing by Mike Barnacle, who's he's a media person who lived in Boston, and he, of course, was very deeply affected by it, and he said, "We will go on.
Yes.
We will not let them
Yes,
stop us."
exactly.
And that's, it's become that whole thing about Americans, we will move on, we will
go,
But it's
yes.
painful.
Oh, it's very
and
painful.
Do we have ways of, dealing with it, like you would deal with it with your poetry?
Absolutely. I'm also a member of an organization called the National Association for Poetry Therapy. They're using poetry, therapeutic. They came out with a poetry book shortly after September 11th, where individuals who were affected by it sent in their poetry, and they published it as an anthology. And poetry is very healing. It's a very healing feeling, for me anyway, and I think for a lot of people.
Well, I think for a lot of people, even just listening to it is healing.
Yes, exactly. The words are said, and there's some legitimacy about it at that point.
I think if the poet captures the feeling, you can, a feeling that you have, you can relate to it, but if he captures a different feeling, you see another perspective.
Yeah, many times on Facebook, which has just become a tremendous outlet for people to put in their feelings, whenever an event happens, a very difficult event, I seem to have a poem that I wrote about it, and I paste it on Facebook. And
That's great.
And I've done that, I have to do it for Boston Massacre, because the marathon, but on page 35, another poem that I wrote about the end of the Cold War. Named,
Another event. Where was I when?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Right. Oh, yeah. You could just see a whole life in this. If you're sort of like a baby boomer, you'll see. And again, I mentioned there's a poem about September 11th in here also.
Oh, good.
The poem is called "Some Hole in the Wall" in 1989. Eat all of it. Finish your plate. People in Europe are starving. The Soviets and communists are trying to take over. Common sentiments at dinner tables from 1955 to 1989. And on TV, news programs were dominated by visions of Khrushchev and Brezhnev and Johnson and Nixon and Carter and Reagan and George H.W. Bush fighting the Cold War. The Iron Curtain, the Berlin Wall, the Kremlin, the KGB, the evil empire. Then, so quickly it seemed, there was Gorbachev and Reagan and tear down this wall. Then there was that hole in the wall, the crack in the wall, and the wall came down. Down came communism, and up went economies and democratic institutions, and the ideals common to all humanity, freedom and freedom at a price. The Stalin, 10 million dead, or the Gulag, exiled, or the silently persecuted, but freedom in spite of the pain.
Yeah, very good. You really captured that.
Thank you.